Hey, what's up everybody? Too Tall Toby here, and welcome back to our ongoing series of power moves where we're talking about how to create the 3D geometry for this horn. This might be something that you would use for a cosplay type project to create a prop for that, but maybe there's some other skills that you can learn throughout this series that you could use on your own projects. So in our last episode of this series, we talked about how to create two 2D sketches, one sketch here on the right plane, one sketch here on the front plane, and then how to project those two together, leaving us with this 3D projected curve. Now we're going to talk about how to use that curve to create our profile planes for our loft. Now, the thing about this loft is that we decided to terminate this loft just a little bit short of the tip. And the reason that we did that is because we didn't want it to terminate at a sharp point, but instead we kind of wanted to round off that tip. So what that means is we need to create some geometry to generate the plane here at this end of that lofted center line. And so to do that, we're going to take this projected curve and we're going to convert it into a 3D sketch. So here we see in our model, we've got our two 2D sketches. These have been projected into this projected curve here. Now we're going to go to the toolbar for sketching. We're going to fly out this menu and choose 3D sketch. Once we choose 3D sketch, we can choose our projected curve, and then we can choose convert entities. And what this does is it basically makes a copy of that projected curve in a 3D sketch as a spline. Now, on an aside, the curve tool itself is a little bit hokey. It doesn't really display correctly when you rotate. Sometimes it's difficult to select the endpoints of that curve. So there are other benefits of converting this into a 3D sketch into a spline. It's just, in my experience, it's just a little bit more reliable or easy to work with geometry. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to do that. We could use that curve as our path for the loft center line, but we're going to use it converted into a spline. It's easier to work with, and it's going to give us the ability to do this next step, which is we're going to right mouse button on the spline and choose the command Sketch Tools, Split Entities. A little bit off the screen there. Let me try this again here. Right mouse button, Sketch Tools, Split Entities. And then we're gonna left click on the spline. And what this will do is it'll take that spline and break it up into two segments. So now we can make this upper segment here for construction, and we can add a driving dimension between that upper segment and this point. And we can say that we want that to be at a distance of, say, 5 millimeters. So we're going to terminate the loft 5 millimeters from the end, and that way we can kind of round off that end using a fill surface, which will come up just a little bit later in the project. So now we can exit that sketch and we could call this 3D spline loft path, something like that. Now we're ready to create some loft profile planes. And so that first loft profile plane will be created by using the command reference geometry plane. We'll pick this loft spline and we'll pick this endpoint, and then you can hit the green check mark. That's going to be our upper loft profile plane. And then we're going to do the same thing down at the bottom. So we're going to do reference geometry plane, pick this 3D curve, pick the endpoint. What we're doing here is we're making a new plane perpendicular to the curve at the endpoint. So that's why we pick the curve, we pick the endpoint, hit the green check mark, and then that is going to be lower loft profile plane. And so now we can just go to each of those planes and create a circle on each of those planes. So I'll go to the lower profile here. I'll create a sketch of a circle. You know, what is the diameter of that circle? Well, we may need to examine this, the original image here. Maybe we'll add a driving dimension onto this, and we'll say that's going to be 50 millimeters, something like that, maybe like 55 millimeters or even 58 millimeters. You know, get ourselves that diameter for that horn. Maybe we measure the horn itself to get that. And then up at the top here, our upper loft profile, select that plane, begin a sketch, and then this is going to be a circle as well right there on the path. Let's say this is going to be 6 millimeters in diameter, and let's view this thing from the front to see if that's pretty close. Maybe it could be a little bit tighter, maybe 5 millimeters. Let's see. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So 5 millimeters for that upper one, 58 millimeters for that lower one. And now we can exit those sketches and we can rename that. This is going to be called lower loft profile. This is going to be called upper loft profile. And now that we've got those two loft profiles in place, we can create a surface loft. Now we could do this as a solid as well. It'll work as a solid as well. The reason we're doing it as a surface is because we're gonna do a filled surface in just a couple of steps. So turn on your surfacing toolbar, choose the command surfaces, lofted surface, and then this lofted surface is gonna go from this profile to this profile. There's our lofted surface. And then the extra kind of bonus function that maybe you didn't know about is we can use this option down here, center line parameter, and then we can choose our 3D sketch of that spline. And so you can see here that it's kind of like a sweep and a loft together. It's a sweep because it's following a center line. It's a loft because it's going from one profile down to a different size profile. So it's kind of like both in one command. And you can do this as a solid or as a surface. But now I'm gonna hit the green check mark and we're gonna look at this thing from the front view. It looks okay. Looks like it's a little bit narrow here in this middle section. And we'll look at it from the side view and kind of the same feedback. It looks okay. It looks like it maybe is a little bit too narrow around this section. So I think in the next video, we will talk about what we can do to fix up that center section of the loft, make it a little bit bulkier in that region. But I think this is a good place to stop for this section of the video. You can see that we're following right along with the version that we created here, the final version. We've got our loft profile 1 down at the bottom. We've got our loft profile 2 up at the top. We've got our loft center line, but we've actually got an additional profile in that one. And so we'll talk about that in the next video. But for now, I hope that you learned about how to take a projected curve and convert it into a 3D sketch. And you learned that you can loft, but still use a center line the way you use in a sweep. So if you enjoyed learning those tips and tricks, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. Let me know if you have any comments down below. And of course, be sure to come back for the next episode of Power Moves.